Okay, good morning. So where we were yesterday is we just said over the story about Rav Huna on Ham Beis. The last third of the page, Rav Huna, he had 400 barrels of wine that had turned into vinegar, and they approached him and the rabbis hinted at him that maybe he had done something that was inappropriate with his sharecropper. And he said, I did something inappropriate with my sharecropper. My sharecropper robbed me. How could you possibly be accusing me of doing something, wrong with my sharecropper? And they said, no, it's basa gan v'ganav v'time of time. You're a ganav achar ganav because of the fact that you are going to be stealing from him, given that he's stolen from you. So what I didn't say yesterday I think we discussed whether the girsa of having Rabbi Yehuda was a little bit easier to understand. Today, I just wanted to make a note that he agrees at the end of the Gemara that he's going to, in fact, give the sharecropper all the bits of the price that the sharecropper would normally be entitled to, even though this sharecropper had been stealing from him, and either his vinegar became very pricey or his vinegar turned back to wine. The Gemara tells us in Megillah and Yigimel and Beis that when you deal with people, you could deal with them in the way they deal with you, and therefore it was okay even for Yaakov Avinu to deal with Ramos with Esav, right? Because he said Ki achi aviyahu, v'chi ben Rivkahu, that Yaakov Avinu was telling Brachot that he has the ability to deal with love and Zaram, and he can be a Rabbi too. And the Gemara says it's mutter. So why is the Gemara challenging Rav Huna and saying that it was not appropriate to deal like this with his sharecropper? Sharecropper is dealing with him inappropriately. He's stealing from him. So in my mind, maybe this is a situation of Lefnim Mishras Hadin. The Gemara B'Mitzvah Pei Gimel tells us a ma'isa there that the mamish required. The Gemara there, Rabbi Bachana and Rab, that the mamish said to Rabbi Bachana, who had hired workers who had, they were klutzy workers, so they dropped the ball, they broke whatever it was that he had, and so he took their clothing from them, he took their jacket, so they caused me a loss. So over there, not only did Rav say that he has to give them back the jackets, but he has to pay them for the fact that they worked the whole day, even though they were klutzes. But to me, this is over there. Rav Bachana is demanding that out of Rav is demanding that out of Rav Bachana. That's a situation of Nimashra Sadin, where the workers they were klutzes. They were sort of shaggies. They didn't deliberately intend to harm him. They weren't stealing from him. Over here, we're missing Mamish even a step further. Here, the workers were Mamish stealing from him, and nevertheless, we're still being required to give them what they're entitled to. So on that, where would they get the right to say Lefnim Mishras Hadin so far? So I wonder, maybe because of the fact that they didn't come in from nothing. It's not like they took him to din. It's not like there's somebody complained over here. The sharecropper didn't come and complain. He was upset because his 400 barrels of wine had turned to vinegar. So now they had an in to say. It's not us telling you Lefnim Mishras Hadin. We thought maybe sometimes it's a din by special people that they have to go Lefnim Mishras Hadin. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave you a sign. There's a problem. Your wine has turned to vinegar. So therefore, we're coming out to tell you, after maybe what's going on is this. You hear the word? It's not a word in Lefnim Mishras Hadin that's required without a din situation, but because they had now a sign from the Rebbeinu Shalom that your wine had turned to vinegar, maybe that's how they got the ability to say it's a shtikla situation of Lefnim Mishras Hadin that's required over here. Good. That was the Gemara that we saw yesterday, and now we move on. New Gemara, Tanya, Abba ben Yamin Omer. Who is Abba ben Yamin? We don't actually have much from him, except here. This next few Gemaras on Hey, on the Beis, and Vav and Aleph was the only mentions of Abba ben Yamin in Shas. So Abba ben Yamin says, Al Shnei Devarim Hayisi Mitzar Kol Yomai. I was very concerned about two things my whole life. Number one, Al Tfilas Shetehei Lefnei Mitasi. I was very concerned that my tefillah should be next to my bed, and my bed should be between the north and the south. On the fact that I was very concerned that my tefillah should be next to my bed, My lifnei mitasi. What does it mean next to my bed? Elam lifnei mitasi mamish. If it means mamish next to my bed. Vam Rav Yehuda my Rav Yitem Rav Shimon Levi. Minayin l'mispal shalei hey davar chaytis b'nei levin akir. How do you know that a person is not supposed to daven with anything blocking between him and the wall? Remember, he said, "Chizkiyo panav el akir v'yispalel." Chizkiyo turned his face to the wall and he davened. So you see, you're supposed to daven next to a wall, not next to something blocking the wall. So what does it mean then that he's saying that he's davening next to his bed? His bed is blocking the wall. So loy tem lefnei mitasi. Don't say it means mamish next to my bed. Ela emos samach lemitasi. Say it means next to my bed in a proverbial sense. It explains Rashi. What does it mean samach lemitasi? It means that I don't do anything when I wake up, aside from going to daven. Says Rashi, if you look at the Rashi in Samach Mitasi, Kol Yomain is hard to Shaloi Lasik Malacha, Shaloi Lasik B'Torah, Kishamarati Mitasi. When I get up in the morning, I don't work and I don't learn. Rather, what do? First, I daven and I say the Shema. That's what it means, Samach Mitasi. When you get up, you go straight to davening. You don't learn. How are we doing this now? Did anybody daven yet? No. Did anybody say Kriya Shema yet? No. So how are we learning? So Taisus says, I don't understand what Rashi's talking about. So if you look at Taisus, Taisus says, "Ela ema samach lemitati." He says he brings down Rashi, "V'lo yadati min alei." He says, I don't know what Rashi means. I have a raya. He says the shari lilman. I have a raya that it is much to learn before davening, what the Haimisha world called partugs, right? So he says, I have a raya for that. What's my raya? The Amrinon, we're going to say later on, and the Gemara is going to say, the Rav Makdim Amashi Yadam Varachel Masne Pirkev Kar Kriyashma Kimat Zman Kriyashma. The Rav would learn and give a shir, and then he would say Shema when it came time for Zman Kriyashma. So you see that you could learn before davening. So I should point out that the Tais Harash, when he brings down this, says it a little differently. So the Tais Harash says that he asked the same kasha on Rashi that Tais asked, and the Tais Harash answers, the Efshar the Mari ba'adam shemispal b'veis midrasha. Where is it going to be usher for somebody to learn before he davens? That's somebody who's davening his own personal base medrash and his own sfurim shtib. He's getting up in the morning and going to learn in his own house, in his own library. So he might forget to go to daven. However, right, because over there the equal mechash still maybe he's going to get too caught up in the learning. The average man but somebody who's going to, in fact, be going to shul, then you wouldn't be so concerned about it. In fact, if you look in our Chaim Pei Tes, when the Mechaber brings down this halacha about not learning before davening, the Mechaber says that's only talking about people who are bichidis, who are going to be davening by their own home, but they don't have a set schedule. But obviously, people like ourselves in our situation, we have a minyan at a specific time. We know we're not going to forget to daven, and so there's no concern. Think about what we just said before. The other day on Dalan days, the first taste is about Bekir Kriyashma Mispal. The taste said the mashma shemisha shegiazman Kriyashma shalayla she'ein loy lechol seuda ad sheikar Kriyashma. Remember, Taisa said that once it became the time of Shema at night, that a person shouldn't be eating before he davens, and we said eating, maybe it's even te'ima. How could we have te'ima? Now these people eat go by the shmorg, and we said that's because people always have ma'ariv after the chuppah, so no one's going to forget. Okay. So continues the Gemara. So that was one thing that he was very concerned about Abba Binyamin. Number one, that he would daven always right after he got up out of bed. But of course, what we're saying is that means not going to work and forgetting that it's time to daven. Presumably, if somebody has a regular minyan and he gets up early to do work, and he knows he's going to a regular minyan, he's not going to forget to daven. So again, probably would be the same heter as well, potentially. Although there are those that bring down, and we bring down halacha that somebody's going to be working before they daven, right before it says the Brachot start, before they do anything. So you're worried about your actual life and not your spiritual life. You first have to daven for your soul. You first have to daven. The Rebbeinu Shalom should take care of you. Then you're gonna take care of yourself. Fine. Continues the Gemara, and the Gemara says as follows: we are now on the second part of Abba Binyamin's statement that his bed was the Amitashish Nesuna ben Safam Ladam, that he used to put his bed between the north and the south. The Amar Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Kol hanesim mitosoi bein tzafon l'darim, havin lebanim zcharim. Whoever puts the bed between the north and the south is going to have male children. Shene'emar, utzvuncha tamali bitnam yizbu banim. Right? Utzvuncha is something that's hidden, but also sounds like what? The north, tzafon, right? Tzafon, like in the Seder, right? Tzafon is what's hidden, but it also means for the north. And that the hidden things are going to fill up your belly, and Yisbu Ban is going to have children. That's what's going to fill up the treasures that are going to fill up the belly. So, because it has to do a little bit with Safine, that's how, the hint is that the person's going to have children. She's not going to have any miscarriages. Because in the pasuk, which is talking about the belly being pregnant, the word timale and vayimlu yamel loled, that's finisayim bevitna. Later on, we're going to see in when 2 weeks parsha from now in Parshas Toldos. Vayimlu, so you see, it refers to being able to carry to term, even if there were any issues. She didn't have any miscarriages. Fine. This is the first lesson that we had from Amud Yomi. Now we go to the second teaching from Amud Yomi. Tanya Amud Yomi Omer. Another lesson from Amud Yomi. Shnayim shenichnasu lihispalel. 2 people that came to daven. They called them echad mehem lihispalel, and one of them finished first. And he didn't wait for his friend. The yatz, and he leaves the shul. He leaves where they daven. Turf and let tefillah to be fun. The mama should rip up his tefillah. Shenemar turf nafshe ba'apoy halaman chateyozev oretz. Right, they are turf nafshe ba'apoy, the ripping up of the nefesh. What exactly is the nefesh have to do with the tefillah? If you look at the Rashi of turf nafshe ba'apoy, right, the last few words of Rashi. Rashi says, "Kimoy shenemar ve'eshbech es nafshi l'fnei Hashem." Right, by Chana, she's spilling out her soul in prayer to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the nefesh here is referring to tefillah, and that's what it means in pasuk. The turf nafshi ba'apoy Hashem, in his anger, as it were, whatever that means, is going to rip up your tefillah. Why? Because you didn't wait for your friend. It's not only that your tefillah is going to be ripped up, but you're going to cause the Shekhinah to leave the Jewish people. The tzur, the rock, is going to leave its place. What does it mean? The rock is referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Rabbi Binyamin is telling you that he was very makbid, that the 2 people are davening, that one of them finishes before the other one, that he shouldn't leave. He shouldn't let the other one stay there and daven alone, but rather he should stay with him. And if he waits for him, what is the big schar that he has? So Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, Zeicha lebrachas halalu, he is zeicha to this bracha and this pasuk, Shnema luhik shavtel mitzvosai. Would it only have been that you waited for my mitzvahs? As Rashi says, bishvil mitzvosai, for my mitzvahs. In this case, we're saying waiting for the other person who's davening. V'hi kanar shleimecha tzikos l'gal hayam. Then it would be like the river of like peace, and like the tzidkis would be like the waves of the sea. V'ikachol zaracha, and your children will be like the sand of the sea. It said so, etc. All wonderful things if you wait for somebody to finish davening. I should mention here 2 things. Number 1, Taisus points out, what does it mean? I'm a spavel himton. There's a little bit of a difference again between Taisus and Taisus Harash. So the way Taisus understands, Rabbeinu Tam says, look at the top Taisus here on Vav and Aleph. Rabbeinu Tam, they used to daven in their days in the fields. So what is Amud Yomi saying? You have to wait for somebody in shul. If you leave shul before somebody else finishes davening, you're a terrible person. Hashem's going to be terrible. Nafshis, and Mom's going to rip up your tefillah. What's so bad? So Rabbeinu Tam is explaining, in those days it was bad because they davened in the field. So you leave a guy alone in the field, who knows what's going to happen to him? You walk back together. You walk back in a period. Remember, we already saw the Gemaras before, right? We already did the Gemaras before on Gimel about Mazikin and 2 people. That was a churva, whatever. But 2 people is more safe than 1 person. So that's what Taisa says, and then we get a very interesting historical note. The Ri used to daven longer, and he would wait till everybody left shul. What happens if somebody else came into shul late? So what would the Ri do? He would wait. He would look in the sefer until whoever came late finished davening. And Taisus concludes, it's good to be machmer even for us. So you see how we jumped? Rabbeinu Tam says the concern was what? In their days. It's not a concern in our days. In our days, we don't daven in the fields. We're davening in a shul, in town. So what's the worry? There's no worry. Says that's Rabbeinu Tam. Says the Ri, or Taisus bringing down B'Shem the Ri, that no, he waited until everybody left the shul, until everybody was comfortably gone, and then he would wait for the last person. That means that for the Ri, that concern wasn't just then, it was also now. Okay? So if you look in the Teis HaRosh, the Teis HaRosh brings it down a little bit differently. The Teis HaRosh says that he had a line where he said, the same with the way the Teis brings down Ben Tam. And then Teis HaRosh adds, maybe this will be true even by our synagogues at night. The and the Ri would wait at night. I'm sorry, the Ri would wait. The Ri would wait even by day. When people were davening. So he's bringing down the Ri. The Ri is dealing with even by the daytime he would wait. Again, what's the fear by day? And Teis HaRosh is adding, maybe by night there is such a fear. Again, you can imagine in those days at night, no electricity, maybe there are goyim around, blood libels. You can imagine there was potentially a fear as well. Either way, I should mention before we move on, because I did forget to point out that there is a Teis HaRosh that on the issue of being davening semich l'mitasi, what we end up saying is when you get up in the morning, you should daven right away, and you're allowed to learn if you know you're for sure going to daven. Fine, but Taisus had pointed out here, we didn't do the Taisus, but Taisus had pointed out it's the third Taisus from the bottom on the Hayam Beis. Taisus had pointed out that an aron and a teva is not a hefsek. Because they're attached to the wall, that's not considered a hefsek. But a bed, because a bed is movable, a bed would be considered a hefsek. But Teis HaRosh, when he brings it down, he talks about what kind of an aron and a teva are we talking about? I thought we were talking about an aron and a teva in your room. The Teis HaRosh brings it down as an aron and a teva, which you're putting a Sefer Torah on. In other words, because you might have asked the question, well, I'm in shul, if somebody's davening and there's an aron blocking him, or the beam is blocking him, or something is blocking him, that's not considered blocking. And obviously, human beings are not considered blocking. If somebody you're dying next to somebody else, that's not either considered blockage. Otherwise, you would have a shul, the whole middle would be empty, and everybody would be pressing up against the wall. That's not required in the Vart of Amud Yomi. Okay, continues on the Gemara. Another teaching from Amud Yomi. So Tanya Amud Yomi Aimer Ilmole Nitna Rishus La'ayin Lirois Ein Kol Berichod L'Amud Bnei Mazikin. If a person had rishus to see, no one would be able to manage because of all of the demons that are around us, all of the mazikin, the shadim. Amar Abaye, inu nefishim minan. Abaye says they're way more than us. V'kame alon kikisl ugya. They're standing around us like you have mounds around, like tells around the ditch. Amar Avuna, kol chad v'chad minan, alfa mismole, v'rova zemimine. There's 1,000 on our left. For each one of us, there's 1,000 mazikin on our left side and 10,000 on our right side. You remember the pasuk? The Maharsha brings down the pasuk that we say every day. Yipol mitzidcha elef or vava miminecha. Right? We say every Shabbos. So the idea being that you have 1,000 mazikin on your left side, 10,000 on your right. Imagine if your eyes were open to see that kind of a multitude, you wouldn't be able to manage. Yeah, and you want to know how real these mazikin are? When you were going to the shir on a Shabbos, they used to give drushes, and you feel it's being pushing and shoving. It feels tight, even though it's not. It doesn't seem so obviously tight. That's from them. Minayo have it. Hi birke the shili minayo. The knees that are weak are also from them. Hi, Mani, the Rabbanan, the Bolu, Mechufi did who? The a shiny suit. If you wear a suit for too long, it's very shiny. So that's also coming from them, from the friction that they're rubbing up next to you, because there's so many of them. Hani carried the menak from minayu. If you have your feet are in pain, that's also from them. Fine. So it says the Gemara, Hi man the boy lahu. Anybody wants to know if he has mazikin around him? So laisi kitma nele v'neder purye. You should take a lot of ash and put it around his bed. But for chazik he carried the tarnagol, and he's going to see the footprints of a tarnagol, right, next to his bed. Those kind of little prints that you see a bird makes. If you see that next to your bed, when you put ash around it, then you'll know that you're surrounded by mazikim. That's if you want to know that there are mazikin around you or not. What happens if you actually want to see these mazikin? So Lacey Shalyasa the Shunrasa. So then you should get the placenta of a cat. What kind of a cat? Uchmasa bas uchmasa. It should be a black cat, the daughter of a black cat. Buchursa bas buchursa. It has to be the eldest female cat, the daughter of the eldest female cat. As Rashi says, Bukhar le'aim. This is a favorite topic of mine. I can't go into a tangent now. But Bechar La'im is something that the Torah celebrates. We call it the Pidyon Haben, but that's the male. What about the Bechar Ra, the female? On Erev Pesach, is there an Indian for the girls to fast, or is it just the boys? You go to Erev Pesach, Shach is always packed, and these shows packed jammed. Why? Because everyone has to say that Shach. I never imagine all these places, people, they don't daven Shach, but it's a fast. They know they got to go here and see him in order to be able not to fast. Right, but maybe it's also brought down that the Bechira also need to fast. Why? Because there are opinions that say that who died in Makkah Bechiras, it wasn't just the Bechirs, it was also the Bechiras, the oldest in the house. Okay, we'll put that on the side for now. So if you want to see these mazikim, if you want to see them, you got to get a black cat, the daughter of a black cat, the eldest black cat, with the daughter of the eldest black cat. And what do you do with this placenta? Well, kalya benura, well, shachke, you burn it up in a fire and you chop it down, you make chopped placenta. And then when you get that, and then you put it by your eyes and you will see these mazikim. And you should know, shad to be good to the parzel, you should put these ashes in an iron tube. The parzel, you should make sure you have an iron stop, seal that's going to hold it, because otherwise, they're going to want to come and steal it from you. You have to close it up, so that you shouldn't get damaged. Baby Barabaya did this. Chaza, he saw the shadim, the itzik, and he was in fact hurt. The Itzi, and he was prayed for. The Rabbanan, they davened for him, and he got better. Now, I thought it would be remiss of us to go through the sugya of Mazikin, this member from Amud Yomi, without discussing the famous, the infamous, depending on your perspective, Bir Hagra. The Bir Hagra is in your Kuf Ayin Test, says the Bir Hagra as follows. Harambam. The Rambam writes, and this is the connection of this is the halacha that somebody who was bitten by an akre, if someone was bitten by a scorpion, is mutter lilchay shalav. It's able to do lechisha. Lechisha is some sort of magical incantations. Tafilu b'Shabbos. The afmishen adavar ma'il klum, says the Mechaber, even though we know, of course, it doesn't do anything. Hayil sukon, who nevertheless, since it's very dangerous, Tiroi, they were matter to do it. Kadesh let the tire of diet to love. So the person shouldn't lose his mind, shouldn't be losing his mind in fear over this situation that has happened and that he was bitten. This halacha, as Mechaber is bringing down, is essentially what the Rambam says. It's much a little closer to Shabbos because you want to keep a person's sanity. If a person not going to have lechisha is going to go crazy, and you never know what might happen. They might have a nervous breakdown. Says the Gra. This idea that the lechisha doesn't do anything, that it doesn't actually practically have any value, but it's a placebo effect because the person needs it. He in his mind, you have to do this, you have to have these murmurings, and if you don't have it, he's going to be very ill. So says the Gra, this is the opinion of the Rabbah, But everyone who came after the Rambam disagreed with him. We have the Gemara tells us a lot about Lachisha. Who nimshach achar philosophy. The Rambam believed that Lachisha didn't do anything because he was following philosophy. V'lochen kasav shekashafim v'shemosh v'lachoshem v'shedim v'kmiyas hakol sheker. That's why he wrote that the shedim and among other things, the Lachishas and all of that are all sheker. Why am I bringing down this Rambam? Obviously, of course, in part because of what the Gra is saying. The Rambam says that the shedim are all false. Right? The demons are all nothing. It's not real. But the rabbis already all beat him up. You see so many Gemaras that talk about Shemesh and Kshafim that you see that these things are real. Therefore, what the Rambam was saying is not correct. He said, and he brings down numerous riots to the fact that there are Kshafim and Kemein and Loichashim, Rabu Milasaper. The philosophy, it's the philosophy, the accursed philosophy that made him make a mistake. And therefore he reads these Gemaras not kepshutai. He reads these Gemaras in a way to make it work with his philosophy. I don't believe in anything that he had to say about this. Of course, the way this is to be understood is pashit, and of course you should know that there's panemius, there's hidden stuff here as well. Like panemius shabbalit philosophy, not the panemius of the philosophers that we throw into the garbage. This is externalities, it's not real. El shabbalit ha'emes, the truth, the true people, which he's obviously referring to the Kabbalists. So, with that said, I should point out that the Meiri, who follows the ikvus of the Rambam, and what does it mean he follows the ikvus of the Rambam? Means he's going to have nothing to say on this sugya. There's no Meiri on this whole sugya here on above about these masikim. There's also no tesis about it, which is interesting. But we do have a Meiri. If you remember, I did quote this Meiri in part the other day, because the Meiri had said to us that you say Shema, Kriya Shema Mitasai, the whole memory that we had on Dalan Beis. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Afilu Afa Pisha Kirk Adam Kriya Shema V'Sakneses Mitzvah L'Kriya Al Mitasai. So the Meiri brought down the Yerushalmi, and he said that in order to get rid of the mazikim, and he said it's not mamash on your bed. Those are the reikim who don't have kavanah. They say the Shema, they're naked in bed, like you're supposed to say it. Next to your bed with kavana, with an appropriate approach. What I didn't say then, and say it for now, is the fact that the Meiri then added, what does it mean that they say in the Yerushalmi that you should say the Shema? I had asked that why does he have to bring in the Yerushalmi? The Bible says right here on Ham and Aleph, it says that if you say Shema B'Delen as the Mazikin, the Mazikin are going to go away from you. So what I didn't mention is the last part of the Meiri. The Meiri says like this, that Ubi Uray Etzli, Hamazikim Hayaduim. And you should know that the explanation to me about what the Mazikim are as follows. Vehem Hadeyes Hakezim. This is bad ideas. This is bad thoughts. These are things that a person has that are inappropriate. Is kiku beites hapnai, and they sometimes grab on, they latch on to a person, and therefore, how do you get rid of it? So you get it by b'miyachad Hashem Hashem shalayit b'emunas hashniyos, and you shouldn't fall prey to these kinds of bad ideas. And when you read the Shema appropriately, you're bringing down the kabos al shamayim. So then you won't fall prey to these kinds of bad notions. So then what is the Meiri going to say about this whole Gemara? What are the mazikim that are surrounding you? It's bad ideas. That's how the Rambam is going to explain it. We know the Rambam doesn't take the mazikim seriously as the thing, although there is one question about the bathroom. We'll get to that eventually. But the Meiri is trying to tell you that mazikim are the things that damage us all the time. Having bad approaches to things, having bad thoughts about things. This is what surrounds us all around us. And the reality is we're supposed to try as much as possible to be able to clear our minds and have the proper intentions and proper thoughts. That's presumably not going to leave chicken feet behind. That's presumably if you take placentas and do this all, it's not going to have any impact. Yes. The Gemara seems to make it out that this literally happened to our baby Barabaya. The Gemara says, Rabbi Bar Abaye Avad Hachi, he did this, and he was Itzak, he got hurt. I should point out to you, this is the same Rabbi Bar Abaye, the son of Abaye. The Gemara tells us Chagiga on Daf Dal and Amud Beis. The Gemara says that Rabbi Bar Abaye was Shchichelu the Malach HaMavis. The Malach HaMavis used to go to him all the time. So, and the Gemara says over there, he had a Maisa, the Malach HaMavis killed somebody, and it wasn't the right person. He killed the wrong Miriam. And so you had a whole kasha on him. How could you do it? And a whole explanation. And it ends up coming out that when people die, they shouldn't die, and they'll take the extra years and we'll give them to Talmidei Chacham who need the years. That's the Gemara there. But I have a kasha. When Rabbi Bar Abaye got hurt, he sees the Malach HaMavis. Could the Mazikin be worse than the Malach HaMavis? Again, I'm not an expert in these matters, but I would think the Malach HaMavis is the scariest dude of all. Right? The Gemara in Avodah Zarah and Chav tells us the Malach HaMavis is Molei Gabay Seinayim. Right? He has he's all eyes all around you. Right? It's terrifying. Clearly, whatever the Malach HaMavis was, it wasn't as scary as these Mazikin. I'm not able to say anymore because I don't know anymore. But this is on the approach that one would take this more literally, then that would be what Gemara that one would have to answer up. Okay, continues on the Gemara. Says the Gemara, another vart from Abba ben Yamin. Tanya Abba ben Yamin Omer. Abba ben Yamin teaches another thing. Ein tefillah shel adam nishmas el b'beis hakneses. You want to know a person's tefillah is answered? It's answered only in shul. Now here becomes very interesting. It's a machlokes rishonim exactly what that means in shul. If you look at Tais Avodah Zarah and Dalet and Beis, Tais there in Avodah Zarah says, and the Rekiv brings it down here in the Gilin Hashas, that Tais says over there that we learn out from this Gemara that what did Abba ben Yamin say? Ein tefillah shalom nishmas ela b'tzibur. Is that what the Lashon Gemara was? Have you ever seen people that say you should daven in a shul? Even if you're not with a minyan, it's better daven in a shul than daven at home. From this Gemara, it's Masha, you should daven in a shul. It's not a tzibur. Tzibur is not there, but you should for sure daven in a shul at a minimum. Now, presumably, most times you're davening in a shul, the tzibur is going to be there. So great. But Tais is learning from this Gemara, and in fact, the Kesef Mishnah disagrees. Kesef Mishnah in Hilchos Tefillah says that there's an Indian daven in a shul, regardless. No minyan, still daven in a shul. Obviously, as many point out, but if the tzibur had left the shul, let's say they're davening outside for whatever particular reason, you shouldn't be in shul davening. You should be with the tzibur. If there was a reason that the tzibur went out to daven, don't be doing that davening in the shul. Go with the tzibur. But I'm talking about a regular situation. There is a value to daven in the Beis HaKnesses itself. Okay, continues the Gemara. What's the source to know that tefillah of a person is only going to really be heard in the Beis HaKnesses? Shenemer l'shmeil arina v'la tefillah. To hear the rina and tefillah, b'mokem rina, in the place where they're singing, in the place where there's a tzibur davening, sham tei tefillah. Rashi brings down the lashon of the tzibur. Look at Rashi b'mokem rina. Bebeis hakneses shesham amrim hatzibur shiras v'zishbachos v'ni'imas v'kol arev, where they're sweetly davening. In the place of rina, that's where the davening should be. Amar Ravin bar Rav Ada Amar Rav Yitzchak. How do you know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is found in a shul? Hashem is found in the adas, in the grouping. What is an adas? So we know ba'adas kel b'beis mayit shaloi, in a place where people are prepared. What is the Eidah we're going to see? How do you know that when you have 10 people that are davening, the shechina is with them? I should just mention Rashi. So where do we learn out this idea of the Eidah? The Eidah is from Terach, right? Because I'm sorry, not by Terach, by the Meraglim. What did the pasuk say by the Meraglim? Ad masai lo Eidah haro azos. That Rashi says. Look at Rashi, and who do we take out of that? Ad masai lo Eidah haro azos. We take out Yeshua and Kalev. So it's not 12 spies, only 10. So that's how you know an Eidah is 10. That's how you know a minyan is 10. So what Rav Ravin bar Rav Ada and the name of Rav Yitzchak is saying that Kosh Baruch is Motzi Beis HaKnesses, and when you have 10 people that are davening, there's a shechina in line. Shenem lekim nisav alaskel, because Hashem is with the Eidah, and the Eidah is 10. How do you know the 3 judges who are adjudicating a dispute that they have the shechina among them? Shenem v'kervli kim. Yishbait, Hashem is with those that are judging. How do you know that even 2 that who are learning Torah b'charusa, that there is a Rebbeinu Shalom, the Shechina is with them? Hashem ish oyev yakshiv Hashem. the pasuk there, Malachi says that the people are speaking, the fearers of God are speaking one toward the other, and Hashem is listening. So it means Hashem is there. The end of the pasuk is the last words are those that are thinking of His name. Amar Rav Ashi, Chashav Adam Lasis Mitzvah V'Nenas. The person has intention to do a mitzvah, and he became an Einis, and he didn't have a chance to do it. He gets credit like he did the mitzvah. How do you know you have one person who is learning alone, that he has the Shekhinah with him? Because it says that any place where his name will be mentioned, I will come along and bless him. Says Nayalimar, ask an obvious question. And once you're going to say that even by one, that the Shekhinah is there, Trey mi baya. Why do you have to tell you that even by two there's a Shekhinah? If by one there's a Shekhinah, of course by two there's a Shekhinah. And now the Gemara says, Trey michtav amilayu b'sefer hazachronis. By two, their deeds are written down in the sefer hazachronis. Says points out Chas V'Shalom to say that by one a person's deeds are not written down in the sefer hazachronis. But Tais says in Chad loy michtav, and Tais says kloimar im acherim, a sefer hazachronis of the rabbim. But in your own sefer, of course, everything that you do is written down, as we know, in the good book or the bad book. There is certainly mention of each and every one of us individually. We have our book. Chad. So that's the Gemara says. Now the Gemara continues. But one is not written in the Sefer Zochanis of the Rab Master says no. If we're going to have a situation where two people have the Shechin among, so I have to tell you three. So the Gemara says no, you have to. What does the mean when you have three people adjudicating it? Then they're not learning; they're trying to make peace. So therefore, maybe it wouldn't be considered learning Torah, and it wouldn't be that the Shechin will be among them. No, the Shechin comes along. The dina nami have it Torah. The dina is also considered Torah. So if I have already three with the Shechina, then I need to tell you 10. Says the more, yeah, I still need to tell you 10. Asar kad meshchina the asya tulos adi asve. By 10, the Shechina comes early and waits for them. We're going to see later on. The Gemara says when there's supposed to be a minyan in shul, the Shechina is there waiting, and it gets angry if the people are not there. We'll get to that in a few days. But by 3, it waits until the Shekhinah actually comes. It doesn't come beforehand. All right, we have another 2 minutes. Let's try to finish up the next Gemara. So now we have another, the one more memra. This memra, we have to point out a very big Rabbeinu Chananel. Rabbeinu Chananel here is the long Rabbeinu Chananel. It goes on this page on Vav and Beis. Rabbeinu Chananel says you have to understand this next Gemara is entirely anthropomorphic. It's not meant to be taken in any sense literally. And the Gemara says as follows: Amar of Avim Barav Ada, Amar of Yitzchak, Minayin Shek, another member from him. So what does he say? Minayin Shek Hakadosh Baruch Hu Miniach Tefillin. How do you know that Hakadosh Baruch Hu lakes tefillin? The Rebbeinu Shalom wears tefillin. Yeah. So the Gemara continues. Hashem swears on his right arm that, which presumably would mean on some holy object, holy relic, right? Which would be the tefillin. So the Gemara says, what does it mean? Bimina izu Torah. The right is the Torah. Shneim Bimina eish das lama, as we have in the pasuk. Bimina eish das, a fiery Torah. So that's referring to the Torah. B'zrei uzai, on the strength of his arm, is elu tefillin. That's referring to the tefillin. Shneim Hashem oiz la'ama yitain. Uminayin shat tefillin oiz hem liYisrael. You know that the tefillin are strength for the Jews. The nations of the world are going to see, and they're going to be afraid. The Tanya Belezer Gadol, Omer Belezer Gadol says, "Elu tefillin shebereish." What we're talking about is the tefillin shebereish. In other words, as it were, the Rebbeinu Shalom Taisus has a whole question. I can't get into it right now. Taisus says, "Elu tefillin shebereish." Taisus says, "What are we talking about?" Which and Taisus brings down the idea that maybe it's the notion that there's a shin and there's a dalet in the back, and Taisus can't be because the ritzuas are tashmisha kedusha. Taisus ends up saying it's the tefillin shebereish in the sense that it is what is seen by everybody around, and therefore that is what people can become fearful of. But the tefillin shabiyad is hidden, and so people wouldn't actually see that. And that's what we mean when we say that the tefillin would be something that the nations of the world would be afraid of. Amalei Rav Nachman Yitzchak Rav Chia bar Oven, Hani tefillin demari alma Mike Sivbu. What is written in the tefillin of the Rebbeinu Shalom? Amalei Mika Amcha Yisrael Gayacha Baris. That it's written in what kind of a nation like the Jews, one people on earth. I should mention here that Taisus might be hinting at this, but certainly there are those who would like to read the Gemara in a non-literal way. that what is the tefillin of the Rebbeinu Shalom? It's the Jewish people. The Jewish people are the tefillin of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and that's what it means. Yisrael asher b'cha espa'er. Right? The God glorifies himself in the Jewish people. We know that pe'er is tefillin. Right? So if you look at that, it says, brings down a python that says tetos is godly. That might be a reference a bit to this idea. Okay? So furthermore, mishtabech kuche brichu b'shavachayid Yisrael, is God praising the Jewish people like this? And the Siv es Hashem amartayim Hashem amirchayim, Hashem in fact does praise the Jewish people like this. Amalam HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael atem asisuni chativa akis ba'olam. You made me in this world, in our world, into a something. V'ani es eschem chativa akis ba'olam. I'm going to make you something in my world in the celestial heavens. Atem asisuni chativa akis ba'olam. Right, that's what we've had in the pasuk. Here's our part in the parsha. Right, ki yadatzav l'manashe yitzav as one of his basic achra. Hashem says he has to tell everyone what he's going to do with Stoim, but he says, "I know what you're going to do. You're going to tell your children and their children after them. Ki yadatzav l'manashe yitzav as one of his basic achra v'shamu derech Hashem l'asistako mishpat." That's what you're going to do, Avram. So therefore, it's kedai. For HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he makes us also in his chativa in the celestial world. We make Hashem our main thing in this world by being miyachad Rebbeinu Shalom, by being kabal malchus shamayim. And I make you into my chativa in the celestial heavens. That makes sense for one of the bottom in the tefillin. There's 4 bottom in the tefillin. Mashar bottom mai. So what does it say in the other ones? And that's what it says in all of the bottom. It says more, but that's 5. There's only 4 bottom, and you have 5 different ones. So is the Dami Miga Gadol, and Miga Gadol is the same, so that's Bechad base. That goes in one bias. Asher Cheshom Mikam Yisrael, Bechad base. That goes in one bias. Anishalehim Bechad base. So Sitchelim Bechad base. So that all goes each one. That's how you have 4 bottom. The Kuluk Sivi Badrai, and in the hands fill in as it were of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That would all be written in one bias. Have a wonderful day.